Well, welcome, Ariane, and welcome all of council. I get the privilege of chairing you guys today. Be kind, be gentle. So I'll call this meeting to order because we are recording already. And excuse from the meeting. Molly will be in, so I'm not sure we should excuse her because she will be back once the presentation's done. What's appropriate as far as the wording in regards to her returning? Or do we just leave her as part of the meeting? My question to administration. Kevin or Lane?
Yeah, so there's no need to excuse her if she's going to be part of the meeting. So
okay.
If she wasn't going to attend, then you would need a motion.
Okay.
Or you should have a motion.
Wayne?
I think as long as Ariana keeps track of when she comes in and leaves, that would probably be good enough, wouldn't it?
Okay, I think that's appropriate. So nobody's excused. Going on to the adoption of the minutes as circulated. Wayne?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Wayne moves to adopt the minutes of the June 11th meeting. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Call for post agenda. Kevin?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I've got one legal in-camera matter, please.
Are there any other post-agenda items?
Just that which was circulated with the agenda.
Okay. If not, I'd look for a motion to adopt the agenda. Tracy? All in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Question period. Do we have anybody in the on live stream that would like to have a question? Todd, do you have anybody other than ones on my screen that are online?
Yeah, Brian, we have 5 people viewing, but no questions are in the queue. And I think Ariana likes us to wait a few minutes just to make sure nobody has a burning question that they would like to ask, but then you're welcome to give her.
So I have 10:11 now, so we'll wait till 10:13, and that should give everybody an appropriate time to ask their questions if they so see fit.
It's too nice outside. I imagine everybody wants to be outside instead of listening to our wonderful council discussion.
So are you guys as overrun with gophers as I am?
I think you and everybody else in the county, yeah. We, I guess we don't have an update this time from ASB, but I think Will told me yesterday we sold 2,700 bottles this year, which is about 1,200 more than normal.
Wow.
I suspect it helps because this is probably one of the last years that we'll be able to use it, but that's still a lot more gophers than we had anticipated.
Like this week, I've been shooting 2 to 3 every day.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's just on my yard. So
there's always a 5-gallon bucket and water.
I like viewing them through my scope.
They, you know, in the springtime when you get all the the first ones that come out and they're kind of dumb and they play chicken with the tires on the pavement. I can't. It's unbelievable how many are doing that now, and it's not typical of this time of year to see so many on the highway, but there certainly is a few.
Okay, so I see 10:13, and I'm assuming you haven't got any more participation as far as questions go, Todd?
That's correct. You're good to
Okay,
go.
so we're gonna move on to, I have bylaw 7.1 for first reading. So I'll turn it over to Jeff.
Oh. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll take this
Sorry,
one.
Maria. I said
That's
I seen
okay.
Supervisor of Planning and Development, so I just assumed that was Jeff. So you go ahead, Maria.
Okay, so this is bylaw 1995-20 for first reading. The purpose of the application is to redesignate the portions of the southeast of 22-15-15 from agriculture to small holdings to facilitate a subdivision. The proposed subdivision will include the existing yard site as well as a portion of pasture land. The applicant is looking to subdivide approximately 7.4 acres from the existing quarter. The subdivision contains the house and outbuildings as well as a portion of pasture, like I said, and the pasture is not irrigated with the rest of the quarter. So in an agricultural district in our land use bylaw, a single lot developed farmstead can be subdivided from the farmland if it does not include any cultivated farmland, pasture land for grazing, or lands unsuitable for agriculture production. So as this proposed subdivision includes extra lands outside of the developed farmstead, a redesignation to small holdings is necessary. So it is recommended by administration that first reading be given to bylaw 1995-20.
Okay, thank you, Maria. Do we have any questions? Oh, the neighbor across the road, the tough guy across the road is going to have a question for us. Go ahead, Wayne.
No question. I just make the motion for first reading.
I thought you'd give Randy a harder time than this, but anyways.
I tried that last night, but he wasn't buying any of it, so there we go.
Okay, is there any other questions prior to calling them for the vote for first reading? If not, all in favor? Opposed? Seeing no one opposed, that motion is carried. Let's jump. We've got a few delegations today, one at 11, one at 1 o'clock, and I thought we had a third one too from, am I mistaken, or do we not have a third one too, that Ariana? Did you send us a notice that there's 3 or just the 2?
It's not an actual delegation, it's down in the municipal services items. It was Mark and John Nesbitt for unsightly property. They just wanted time assigned to that.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to 9.1, which is professional planning services. And Jeff, I think that's you, and Maria, if she's needed.
Good morning, all. Really excited to be here to talk about this today with everybody. Just a little background. September 5th, 2019, County Council made a motion for administration to give notice to ORSC, the required 12-month notice under the terms of the service agreement that we would be terminating our contract come September 5th, 2020. Further from that motion, council provided direction to administration to seek a new path and negotiate a new planning services contract. We spent a lot of time thinking about what we needed and where we needed it, and we put an RFP together that was issued on the Alberta Purchasing Connection site as per the county purchasing policy, and we closed it on May 14th, 2020. There was an astronomical amount of interest in the RFP itself. I believe it was pulled by over 100 organizations from the Purchasing Connection website. Thankfully, we only received 11 proposals for the people doing the ranking. Those 11 proposals were ranked by the Supervisor of Planning Development and the Development Clerk based on a couple of criteria: planning experience, the proposed team and their qualifications that they had, their project management. We included a section for efficiencies and innovations. And then obviously one of the most important things that I always like to check is references. From the initial review, a top 3 list of consultants was selected. I then took the opportunity to read through those RFPs and came to the same conclusion as Shenley and Maria on the ranking order of those 3 proponents. From there, we decided that it would be best suited for us to interview the top 2 proponents. We sat down on life size, just like we are today, and we met with those 2 proponents and had great discussions with them. One of the great things about this whole process, it was not only finding a lot of great people out there in the consulting world and making a lot of contacts, but through this RFP, we asked for two specific projects and implementation plans and cost structure surrounding those. One of those was a rewrite of the land use bylaw. We have found over the past year and a half utilizing it, and longer than that, a number of concerns and irregularities with it that we think need to be addressed. We also have a strong feeling that there is a lot of efficiencies for the end user that can be found in the document. Different ways of organizing information and data that are going to shorten the document, make it more concise, and hopefully a lot easier to implement consistently and use for the end user. The other project that we identified with an implementation plan, what was basically, we'd like to start with this right away upon entering into the service agreement, was a SWOT analysis of the department. This SWOT analysis, we identified it, we left it kind of wide open in the request for proposal, and we wanted it to encompass basically everything planning and development related with the County of Newell. That is everything from bylaws, policies, statutory plans, the land use bylaw, right down to organizational structure, maybe some capacity stuff. We want to look at our processes and procedures because we know that's a major priority, and not only for the organization but for us internally to make sure we are operating and implementing the plans and direction consistently. So I'll try to keep it short here. Under the costs and funding sources, you can see just kind of a rough breakdown with our planning services expenditures from 2018 estimated out through the end of 2022. With the new planning service contract, we feel our day-to-day help desk kind of general questions, clarification is something that we were really in need of going forward. We know we're going to need some direction and some help in the interim during this transition plan. So we asked for an annual fee, of which ISL Engineering and Land Service came back with $10,000 a year. You can see that it is quite significantly lower from the annual fee that we were paying previously with ORSC. The other thing that we requested was an hourly service fee from all of the proponents, and this will be for things that bigger picture things that we think we require assistance from, possibly subdivision reviews where we do have questions and we want to make sure we are following the correct processes and procedures, and ultimately we want to work with this consultant and learn from them. We want knowledge transfer. We want to become the best at what we do here at the county. And the go forward plan is that this SWOT analysis is going to set the stage for what our work plan will look like for the next 3 to 5 years. And the outcome of that will help us determine what areas need addressing, what areas are priority for addressing, and what areas need addressing, but can kind of wait. And in that, we're also looking at what is the best chronological order to undertake these projects. So as you can see in the chart, I'm not sure, it maybe is a little confusing. I tried the best I could to make it understandable, but based on the annual service fee, the estimated hourly service that we as department project over the next 3 years, and then including the base fees for the SWOT analysis and the land use bylaw rewrite, we're estimating to cut our annual expenditures for consulting services quite substantially, as you can see in the RFD. Last thing I'm going to say is, we talked to a lot of good people. We had a lot of good conversations. There were a lot of amazing ideas in all of these proposals, but in the end, we wanted to bring this to council, present it to you folks, so you know where we're at and where we're headed. We'd like to recommend that we do enter into a servicing agreement with ISL Engineering and Land Services based on their proposals as submitted.
Questions for Jeff or Maria? Clarence? I can't hear you, Clarence.
Yeah, I know. Still had a red mic here too. Now, okay. Understanding it's for 3 years then, Jeff?
The way the RFP was written is that it is actually a 2-year contract spanning from July 1st, 2020 to July 1st, 2022. You can see my cost estimates extend to the end of 2022, just to work within our budget year. The RFP did leave the opportunity for an extension to a 3-year contract. Based on both parties being in agreement. We'd really like to get this SWOT analysis done and have a better picture in the first couple months of what the go forward plan looks like and what our capacity internally is and what we may need some additional assistance with. And like I mentioned in the RFD, I'd really like to have that RFD wrapped up and we have a good go forward plan in place to build our budget at a time of budget presentation to council with.
Hey,
Thanks,
Tracy?
Jeff.
I'm just wondering, what is the termination process if, after the first year it totally wasn't working? Is there a procedure to get out of the contract, or how does that work?
Yes, that will be dealt with, and for just cause, this contract can be terminated for any reason. I believe I'd have to go back to the RFP, but I believe we did put a 90-day termination timeline for no reason if either party wanted to terminate the contract at any time.
Other questions? Clarence?
Well, Mr. Chair, it gives me a great deal of pleasure to make this motion as MPC Chair that we go with the recommendation of staff and hire ISL on this contract. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Clarence. Before we go to the vote, I do have one question, and it's in regards to files that we are still in progress, I guess. And the reason I say that is, the one at the top of your chart is North Headgates. And, obviously we, even though there's a lot of work been done on it, how does that integrate with not only your guys' knowledge, but if you needed to use ISL? so that we're not starting from scratch on certain things. I don't see it as a problem. I just wanted your perspective on certain things like that.
You know, from my perspective, I don't see any issues coming down the pipe with that. And, you know, to use the North Headgates ARP as a specific example, we had paid ORSC to create that document, stemming from, you know, the inability for us to get it done any other way. That document has been adopted by council. That is our document now, and you know, it will be one of the documents that gets sent across to ISL, along with all of our bylaws and statutory plans for review during this SWOT analysis. And I don't foresee any issues with them taking over any of the open files that are in progress. There are very few, and I guess maybe I stated that wrong. We as the county are going to be taking over the internal files as an administration internally, and we will be using ISL to assist us with those files at our discretion. This was one of the biggest things that we did clarify in the interview with ISL, and B&A Consulting was the other firm that we interviewed. And you know, we were very firm and very clear, and making sure there was an understanding with how this relationship would work, and you know, the chain of command in how this is going to progress. But they are going to be there to support us in our operations for what works best for the County of Newell. And like I say, I don't see any issue with this file transfer, and once we do have all of our files from ORSC, we'll be prepared to sign off on that termination of that service agreement.
Wayne.
What is the estimated time to get all our files from ORSC?
Well, you know, we actually do have the majority of our files. We made a trip down to ORSC last week with the cargo trailer, and we picked up about 50 to 60 boxes of hard copy subdivision files. I'm currently waiting. We were supposed to receive electronic copies of all of our statutory plans, land use bylaw, things in that regard. They were to be preparing those for transfer by June 5th. Spoke with Lens a couple of times, and they're still working on it. We hope to see those very soon. And yeah, just still leaning on them to try to get that stuff to come across to us. But I'm confident that, you know, we are going to get it, and I'm also confident that we can deal with any hiccups down that road.
Thanks, Wayne. Thanks, Jeff. Is there any other questions before I call the question that Clarence made the motion to? If not, Clarence has a motion made to accept the ISL, the recommendation from staff for ISL and to do the planning with us. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you very much, Jeff. Like Clarence said, that's awesome to move forward, take another big step in the planning department, and I know you and Marie and the rest of the group there are excited to work with them, so happy to have that. 9.2, development agreements and security. Carry on, Jeff.
Thank you very much. This item is something I've got before council on the agenda here for a little bit of direction. I want to provide a little bit of background information, you know, some information why we feel these things are important, and just get some direction. You know, development agreements and security and collecting security at time of subdivision and development is definitely something we are going to be reviewing through this SWOT analysis and through our go forward plan. But what I really wanted to do is have this discussion here today to get some direction in the interim, and it stems from a few issues that we have out in the county where developments have taken place, and you know, the developer has defaulted on the terms of a development agreement, and what kind of remedies we have at this point to complete those, and what the value in taking security is, and what the happy medium is between taking security and restricting development. So just as a little background, you know, the MGA does allow a municipality to ask somebody to enter into the development agreement at the time of subdivision or at the time of development. The two sections identified in the MGA give us the right to require a development agreement for the construction or pay for the construction of a road, pedestrian walkways, underground utilities, drainage networks, things like that. Basically, any infrastructure that the county will eventually take over as their own. It also grants us the right to ask somebody to pay an offsite levy or development re-levy or redevelopment levy. And the last thing that we want to talk about, it gives us the opportunity to take security to ensure that these developments are getting done, and they're getting done to the standards of the County of Newell, so we can take them over and we can provide these services. Typical process is right now, somebody builds a piece of infrastructure, be it a road, a water line, a sewer line. They complete the construction. We go out and inspect it. If it meets our expectations, we give them a construction completion certificate. At time of this construction completion certificate, depending on what type of infrastructure it is, the developer is required to fulfill a maintenance period between 1 and 2 years. During this maintenance period, any defects that show up are going to be fixed by the time of the developer. And after this maintenance period expires, he calls the county for a final acceptance certificate inspection. Upon completion of that inspection, the county signs off on the final acceptance and takes over care, maintenance, and future upgrades and operation of that piece of infrastructure. Historically, we have used development agreements in some cases, we haven't in some cases, and looking back at what we've been doing and going forward, again, we want to be consistent. Consistency is one of our biggest goals here, to treat everybody the same and make sure we're doing the same thing for everyone. Previous developments over the past 10, 20 years even, and, you know, researching some of our development agreements, in some situations we do take security in the form of a certified check or irrevocable letter of credit. In some cases we don't. What I'm here today to do is get direction from council to take security, and we do have it specified in our design guidelines that we would take 125% of the construction estimate as security against developments. And in a little bit of research and digging around, I think for a municipality like the County of Newell, that is quite reasonable. And like I say, further research will be done through the SWOT analysis and what follows that. But municipalities that are rural and have, you know, not a lot of big time developers coming in, they are around that 100 to 150% security that they collect for developments. Larger places, City of Calgary, Rocky View County, City of Edmonton, City of Red Deer, they have a real sliding scale for security collected. And developers, you know, if they have completed 6 development agreements in the last 5 years with the municipality, they can get their security deposit down to as low as 8 and 10% in some situations. But these large cities, they still say, you know, the first time you come for a development agreement, you're still going to pay this 100, 125, 150%. And they say, you know, if you've defaulted on a development agreement with the municipality in the past, you're going to provide 200% security against this development agreement. So I really do like that sliding scale for municipalities who do have these repeat developers coming back and coming back and coming back, whereas the municipality such as the county or other rurals, the developers are not necessarily coming here to do large developments. I mean, Lake Nowell Resort was probably the last example of a major developer that's come to the county and done a huge multi-lot development with paved roads, curb and gutter, water, sewer, so on and so forth. So I just wanted to get a little direction, and we're going to recommend today that, you know, going forward, we do want to build a policy on security, on what we take and why we take it, but it's not going to happen right now. But what we'd like is some direction that going forward, we would like to take 125% security against developments where they are going to construct a piece of infrastructure that will be taken over by the County of Knoll. And, you know, as mentioned, we do have some situations out there right now, and they've came to light based on some complaints of residents in these locations that, you know, why is the county grader not on my road? Well, the issue is that the road hasn't been constructed to county standards. All the terms of the development agreement have not been fulfilled, but we didn't take any security against it. So I'm not saying that we don't have some recourse in these cases, but I need to get further review from legal counsel on that. I do believe that I have been in touch with some of these developers, and we are working towards completion. And I believe that, you know, with a little bit of work and a little bit of communication, we can see these existing developments through. But I do think for a peace of mind going forward, that requesting security is absolutely necessary to get rid of these headaches going forward. And I can respond to any questions.
Thanks, Jeff. Questions from council? I see Lionel.
Actually, Anne-Marie was ahead of me. Okay, thanks, Anne-Marie. I will, just a comment, I guess, not a question so much, but I've run into a couple of issues of people who are unaware of deficiencies in properties that they bought. The realtors do not point these out because it's not in their best interest to get a sale when there are problems that are existing problems there. So as much as I do not like regulation, but we do need something to get developers to finish the projects. And this particular one that we ran into this recently, you know, it's been 10 years and it refuses to finish. So I do believe we need something to force the hands of the developer, and I agree wholeheartedly with Jeff and this proposal moving forward.
Anne-Marie?
Yeah, I agree with this policy too. My question is about the security itself. With Ignore Resort, the developer wanted to give a line of credit, letter of credit, or a bond. And we had a big discussion on what it meant and how you could access that money if you needed it. And Jeff, you talked about a certified check, and I just wonder if that would discourage development, because that could be quite a bit of money that you need up front. So we have to find that balance of getting the money in place that we can access, but not discouraging development.
Hey, did you have a question, Tracy, before I go to Clarence? I seen you had your hand up. So Tracy and then Clarence.
Thank you. I was just wondering, so with this security, so say a development comes in and they have to build a gravel road. So the 125%, is that based on the construction cost of the road itself or the whole development? So if the gravel road is like $15,000 to build, they would pay a security of 125% of that?
Go ahead, Jeff.
The 125% would be based off of an engineer's estimate who designed the road to be constructed for the construction of the road and the appurtenances, the drainage ditches, anything adjacent to the road, the signs, the culverts, things like that.
Okay, I had Clarence and then Wayne. Oh, sorry, Trace, go ahead. Finish your question.
Sorry, Brad. So if there was, like, in that development, there had to be other infrastructure like sewer, water, so that would all be included, right? And then could you just explain to me, it's my just lack of knowledge, what is an off-site or redevelopment levy?
So an offsite levy is something that a developer would pay when connecting to a system. We do have a policy that we have recently come across back from 2012 that talks about offsite levies and how they're charged against developments. It will be, again, reviewed as part of this SWOT analysis with suggestions made going forward. I have not had any experience in implementing offsite levy charges for developers tying into existing infrastructure, but it is a question that does come up quite often. Well, not quite often, I shouldn't say that, because we do have people that tie on to systems that are built, that are constructed, that have had investment into it, but I'm not sure that any offsite levies have been charged in the past on that. When somebody develops a new house in a hamlet that doesn't have services to it, they tie onto the water or the sewer. An offsite levy, and Lane can help me here if I'm a little bit off base, would be their contribution back towards the existing system for the use of it when that happens. Yeah.
Go ahead, Lane.
Jeff's correct. The offsite levies are often charged in the case of urban communities where they have a significant investment that's already been made in their deep services and or paved streets. More often than not, they are charged at the time that raw land is taken out of its natural state and subdivided and created a number of fee simple lots. And there are offsite levy fees that urban municipalities do charge on a per lot basis for the purpose of recovering investment that has already been made in infrastructure that serves the entire community. In the case of some communities, those offsite levy fees are significant. And if you're a developer, the developer will suggest that steep offsite levy fees are a detriment to development happening. But there needs to be a balance between the needs of the community and the right of the developer to receive or to generate a profit or return on their investment for developing property.
Thanks, Lane. Good. Okay, Clarence, and then I had Wayne. So
I guess more of a comment than anything. It's probably a necessary evil. I see it doing a number of things. First of all, I think it will increase the contract, but that'll probably be balanced out in the long run by things completed as you want it. The other thing is, I think it'll weed out some of the, let's call them fly-by-night people that are not reputable people bidding on anything that we need done. So I just think it's good business. We have to do it in today's world, and I think Jeff has already said it, but being consistent from one project to the next, and we don't have a whole pile of them, but it's that everybody gets treated fairly, and I think it'll certainly help getting good, reputable contractors doing what we need done.
So Jeff, but I want to be the fly in the ointment here today. I see this as being sometimes very restrictive. I would like to see the security as you proposed it, but I would like to have it balanced between perhaps offering assets versus cash, maybe half cash or percentage cash and a percentage assets. The problem is, and you can see it, we haven't had much development in the county. And I think this is very restrictive. If you're doing $1 million project and you got to come up with 1.25 or 2.125 million because you got to pay for the project, but plus you need to have the security, that could restrict a lot of development. Whereas if you owned the property, you could use that. If we could take that as part of the security, wouldn't that be a motivator for people to actually do a development? Anyways, I'll wait for Jeff's comments, and I know I've probably opened up a whole can of worms, but I just think that sometimes we look at the lack of development, and then we put a requirement in of 125% of the cash development. And while that's logical as far as getting a thing done, I think it can be detrimental to actually getting developers to invest in our community. Go ahead, Jeff.
That's a really interesting comment, and I've never thought of it in that regard. I also didn't notice that in any of the research that I've done that municipalities would accept assets in form of security, but definitely something we can follow up on and do some chatting about, because like you say, maybe they own the land, but the cash is unavailable. One comment to that is what this does, while some may find it restrictive in terms of development, I think it weeds out those people who are not developers that think they're developers. It might make somebody think twice who needs some cash that they can subdivide 15 lots off their land and sell it and build a substandard road in there and sell it off to people. So there may be that as well. It might thwart some of those people who aren't developers and want to go out and do it themselves and reap the rewards of it.
Thanks, Jeff. I think, Ellen, you had your hand up, and then Lionel.
Yes, it does make a bit more sense just when explained that. And I was always just make a comment that, especially contractors, are they going to be out of the loop when they have to put up the cash up front? So I guess it's a difficult situation, but I understand because of the history of the county and the problems we have encountered, I can see still like to give local contractors a chance. And indeed, that would be a great opportunity if they could put their assets up and still give them a chance, perhaps for a small subdivision or what have you.
Okay, I'll go to Jeff and then to Lionel.
One other thing that you mentioned there, sorry, I've lost my train of thought. You can go to Lionel, Brian. I'm going to have to think about it again.
Well, it even goes further than this, and it goes longer than this. We don't even have a warranty period very long to prove that will stand up. Because we've witnessed that many times in the county of different developments that the county has had to go back in and improve roads that have failed. A lot of these developments have been built on very poor soils, usually in wet areas, where it's very difficult to build facilities and roads that are strong enough to stand up over time. I think we need to be very careful here, and when we do accept a developed road that, well, I know Jeff is on top of it, but in the past we maybe haven't been quite as diligent as we should have been in ensuring that they were quality roads.
Thanks, Lionel. You sort of cut in and out there a little bit. I don't know if the other ones had the same issues, but I had trouble catching all of your comments. So I think we got the gist, though. Mark, I see you have a response or help.
Yeah, Jeff's doing an excellent job answering all your questions here and stuff. But speaking in my tenure with Newell, when I started in 2008, we didn't have any engineer design guidelines or construction standards. And with that, that's where some of the problems with developers back in the day stem from, because they really had nothing to start with and what the county wanted built. Those standards we put into place somewhere around 2012, I believe it was, and they will be coming due for updating and renewal as well. But those are the standards that a developer is expected to meet. The engineer that the developer hires is expected to design to those standards. And with that, it is then a quality assurance and quality control practice that the County of Newell shows up and inspects on any time frame that we want, or as requested by the developer at key points in the development to come and inspect. That comes down to compaction of road subgrade and gravel base in roadways, compaction over top of water pipelines, sewer pipelines, the types of pipes that developers are required to use, the standards behind curb, gutter, sidewalk, thicknesses of concrete, thicknesses of asphalt, types of asphalt. And really what we're trying to do with all of that is protect the county taxpayers' dollars from having to be invested at the end of the day to fix that wasn't done right in the first place. When we take over assets, we're expecting that they reach their maximum life expectancy before taxpayers' money has to be invested in that. And that's been some of the ongoing things, and that's where Jeff and I want to get to with correcting these. When I first started, there were a couple of developments already ongoing, and it was a real struggle to figure out how we dealt with those at that time because the development had been approved. The standards weren't really known, or if they were known, they were substandard to what was potentially not in the best interest, in my opinion. And we have progressed over that time to do better for our taxpayers. And really, at the end of the day, we're looking for good developments out there too that are going to attract people to live in them, to see that growth in the County of Newell. It's not a matter of, we talk about deterring development, but really, as Jeff has already said, that 125% or whatever that value is of the construction cost. To take anything less, it's just for the county to be able to finish the work if we have to go and hire somebody to come and clean up what the developer failed to do. And if that's 5 or 10 years down the road, those costs have likely gone up. Labor component, fuel component, equipment component to finish that stuff. Contractors need more money out of us to finish things than the day that the work was actually planned to take place, unless those timelines are kept fairly tight. So that 125 also acts to cover those rising costs in products, materials, labor, and equipment, as well as it acts as an incentive for the developer to get it done right the first time, and then we can move forward with allowing them to sell lots and get development in place and recover their costs through sales, right? Those are my comments. I think we lost Brian.
It's okay. I'll just keep talking. I'm trying to follow Brian's thinking about county owning assets. What could happen is that you have a developer. He will put 2 lots in the county's name, but doesn't finish the road. So we could end up finishing the infrastructure and be stuck with 2 or 3 lots that we might not be able to sell. So I think we have to give that a good thought. There is something that we need to work on.
Sorry for that. I'm back, but anyways, please catch me up. Go ahead, Wayne.
Okay, another thing is this is happening all over the place. I'm sure there's developers don't have to come up with an extra, say on $1 million project, another 1.5. There's other ways to finance a security, bonds and stuff like that. So, and that is probably common practice nowadays in most places where they do development. So I don't think we're being completely unreasonable asking for this, because we have to, like Jeff said, we've got to protect our ratepayers, because that's part of the job. So I agree with it. Jeff?
I think talking about this process and how it's going to work and how it's going to affect development, I think we're missing out on the flip side of things that, while one of our major goals here is to become consistent and do things the same for every developer, another big goal that the department has is education and being upfront and giving people information that they need to make competent decisions about what they want to do going forward. And that is to say, these people need this information the first day they come into the office, and good direction provided that we can tell them this is what it's going to look like. So now you can go away and you can actually figure out what your costs are and see if this project does make sense for you. And I can tell you, I believe that the customer, the ratepayer, the developer, whatever we want to refer to them as, is going to be very pleased that we can provide that information up front and be consistent about it. And again, like I say, the educational component of this is huge. Getting the information out there, available to the people that need it, and usable for the people that need it.
Did you guys talk a little bit about the sliding scale? Because that really appeals to me as far as having a mechanism where we have developers that are credible, have done excellent work in our county, where they're given a bit of a break when it comes to the encouraging them to do more development in our community. Go ahead, Jeff.
We haven't talked too much about it while you were gone there, but like I mentioned, I do really think that's a great idea that shows leniency and gratitude towards those people that come back time and time again and keep up their end of the bargain and fulfill the terms of their agreements. Like I did mention, we may have a few that are return developers and everything else. So we would have to take back and analyze what that sliding scale looks like. For instance, in the city of Calgary, if you've successfully completed 6 development agreements in the last 5 years and fulfilled all the terms of those agreements, you can get down to 10%. I don't believe we will have any developers that would be at that level, but maybe we're in a different area, we're in a different spot, we're rural, not urban. Maybe that experience is different for us. And I think those are the things that we need to look into. And as mentioned previously, I really think that this should be in policy, and that does provide definite direction and allows us to operate consistently. So going forward, it'll definitely be looked at.
Tracy.
So Jeff, therefore, will you be creating a policy and then bringing that back to council for final approval then?
Eventually, the plan will be to create a policy and bring it back for approval. But what my goal is this SWOT analysis that we're going to undertake with ISL here is going to flush a lot of this out. They're going to take all of our policies that we have as they relate to planning and development, all of the bylaws, procedures, processes, softwares we used, tools that we use internally, and they're going to structure that and make a recommendation on where we could go and SWOT analysis, the strengths and weaknesses that we have, and then the opportunities that we have to improve is going to be the biggest thing that comes out of that. And it's going to build us a roadmap for where we need to go and what we need to get in place. And like I say, all of us, Maria Shanley and I, are all ecstatically excited about the go forward here and what's going to happen.
Okay, we're at 11 o'clock and we have a delegation that is online with us. So we'll meditate on this a little bit and then come back for either you have direction or if somebody is willing to forward a motion. But I think we still need some work done on it. Is that fair enough, Jeff?
That is totally fair. Like I say, I just wanted to get it in front of everybody for their consideration and maybe provide some interim direction here. So I'll be around all day listening in. I'm available to chat.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. So our delegation, Jessica and Jamie, I don't see you on my screen, but do you hear me?
Yeah, I totally hear you. Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you fine, thank you.
Okay.
There you are.
Hi. Can you see Jamie yet? She's here.
Welcome to our council meeting.
Thanks for having
us. We have some information that you sent to us, I believe, as far as the Economic Recovery Task Force. And the chair, the screen is yours, or you can just go ahead. We're all here.
So you have our presentation. Is someone going to share it, or should we share our screen, or what's the best way to go about sharing the presentation?
We have ours. Maybe just reference which screen you're on as you're going through it. So we all have your package that you sent us. Perhaps if you're changing screens, just let us know which one you're on.
Sure. Well, we'll just name the slide before we start. I'll have Jamie do the same thing. So in the first slide, it's our introduction slide. It just explains who I am and who Jamie is. You've met me. I believe Jamie has hopefully come in front of council at some point. She is the marketing specialist and executive director for the Newell Regional Tourism Association. At this time, she has been working with our Economic Recovery Task Force and also helping our economic development team in moving forward and trying to rebound from this pandemic. So those are our introductions. I am Jessica Surgenor, Economic Development Officer for the Brooks region. And again, I've met you all, so it is great that you have us here today so we can talk about this task force. So to get into the second slide, that is our task force development. So how we got around developing this team. It's led by Jamie, Lisa Tippin, and myself. Lisa is the Community Development Manager for the City of Brooks, but she's also part of our Economic Development team. We also have 5 local business owners on this Economic Recovery Task Force. We had reached out to several businesses, and primarily those businesses who are in our main industries of agriculture, oil and gas, manufacturing, those key players. And then we also have representatives from the Brooks Chamber of Commerce, Business Link, Medicine Hat College, and Community Futures, and as well as the BRZ. Just because there's so many programs coming out, we wanted to have both industry, business owners, and all of our economic stakeholders on that task force development. So I'll let Jamie start in on slide 3 if she's available.
Yeah, I think I'm here. Can everybody hear me? Good. So slide 3 is our brainstorming idea gathering. So basically, to kind of start the process, we sent out a couple different surveys. We sent out one survey to our business owners that were on our task force. We sent out a separate survey to the business organizations. We also did send a survey out to a few other business professionals who just couldn't commit to being on the actual task force. Some of the questions you can see on the slide there that we asked, we just kind of wanted to get a little bit of background information as to how the pandemic has affected their businesses, if their businesses were allowed to stay open, how they managed to adjust and diversify, government response, and if any of them have accessed any of the assistance offered through the government. And then kind of one of the main goals we were looking for was to start generating talks on stimulus ideas to benefit the Brooks region. And then in terms of business organizations, we wanted to know if they were providing any new or additional supports to businesses, if they had plans to add any additional supports, and if they knew of any successful programs that were running in other communities. So I'm just going to go through some of the recurring themes that kind of came up from the survey responses. We're going to go into these into greater detail in further slides, so this will just kind of be brief here. The first one was development permitting and property taxes, that the city and the county should look at reviewing these programs. Diversification of the local economy. We've been fairly reliant on JBS in the oil and gas. So what are we doing to attract new business and create new jobs in the region? There was discussion on the fact that we should really be focusing on creating new jobs for residents, on new infrastructure projects, roads, parks, those types of things. Due to the Brooks outbreak we had, the large outbreak, and the subsequent delayed reopening for the first phase, it kind of was a black eye for the community, a lot of people felt, resulting in issues such as getting work outside the community. Some of our contractors would get responses such as, people felt it was better to get a contractor not from Brooks. So there was some issues with that. They felt that the local communication from the mayor and the city was really excellent. We got the information out to residents and businesses properly. There was mixed reviews in regards to the federal support. Those that were able to access it found the support really great. There were a lot of businesses that were unable to access any types of supports, or if they were, minimal supports. The pathway systems came up multiple times from multiple people, especially the extension of the pathway out to Lake Newell. And then tourism development support in a number of areas came up, such as encouraging private business, such as water sport rentals, shuttles to Dinosaur Park, building more indoor and outdoor recreation, working on downtown revitalization, and then working with the EID to develop more camping and lakefront activities around Lake Newell. Once these results were kind of compiled, we had a couple meetings basically to discuss the stimulus ideas that had come up in the survey. During those meetings, we classified each project into immediate, short-term, and long-term projects. So we've discussed the immediate projects in depth, and we're going to go through those in the next. The suggestions that we got were really great. It shows the innovation of our task force members, and that these ideas have the potential to actually spur on some economic activity in our region. Some of these ideas also make the region a more desirable place to live and visit, which of course improves community attitudes, reputation, and quality of life. So we're going to go through just briefly each of the immediate options, and then the short term and the long term. So I'll hand it over to you, Jess.
Sure. So I can happily go over the immediate options. One of the ones that came up as immediate would be downtown revitalization projects. So creating a safer, more pedestrian-friendly downtown area to encourage downtown shopping and event hosting, which would include the possibility of making the main downtown street a one-way and converting the parking to angle, as well as work with the Brooks BRZ or the BRZ to create some downtown events through the summer. This has already been discussed at City Council. We brought it forward on Tuesday, and they're entertaining the idea of doing a pilot project for next year. And this is dependent on the feedback from the BRZ businesses. And then we'll also be discussing this with the public as well. Another immediate option would be the business beautification loan. Through the Brooks Region Economic Development and Community Futures, we've already launched this project, and we've been receiving some inquiries. So we're hoping that it's successful. It was part of the Joint Services 2020 budget. But it also fits well with our economic stimulus ideas. So it is part grant money and then part loan for businesses that want to renovate or spruce up their business. We've also, another immediate option that came up was shop local campaigns. So we could amp up some of our shop local and staycation campaigns, like a bingo game, shopping passport, or possibly doing some Brooks Bucks. So that was another idea. And then another immediate option that's also come forward to City Council this week was off-highway vehicle usage. So looking into how allowing vehicles such as side-by-sides the opportunity to drive within the city and the county. So this would provide economic benefits to local businesses that would need to retrofit off-highway vehicles to proper standards, as well as general maintenance, and then encourage the purchase of off-road vehicles. It would provide a business opportunity for rentals, promote more outdoor lifestyle, and then quality of life to residents. Tourism advantages such as showcasing our region as an outdoor adventure area, and then also giving residents and visitors something new to do. So like I mentioned, it's been discussed with City Council, and we're just looking, they're currently looking into that idea. And then finally, another idea was utilizing programs that are currently available. So one that was brought forward by Community Futures is called Digital Main Street, and they're just trying to get that started. And that's basically to get more businesses up and running online because we are obviously moving into that era. So I'll let Jamie move on to slide 5.
Yeah, so slide 5, we have 3 kind of short-term ideas that the committee wanted to look at over the next few months. The first one I briefly mentioned before, which is the development permit. So things such as waiving development fees, as well as reviewing the current processes, trying to find ways to reduce the red tape and encourage more development in the area. I do know that this has been a priority for both municipalities. I think both are already in discussions in regards to this. So So that's great. This was one of the main functions that our group was talking about. Another one is the local preference policy and tendering process. Basically, trying to see if there's a way that we can make sure our local contractors are given an advantage in tendering projects, or if there are things the city and county can do to work with our prime contractors to encourage the hiring of local businesses as subcontractors. So there's a number of ideas that kind of got thrown around during that discussion. And then the third one is the completion of the pathway out to Lake Newell. A number of people mentioned this in both in regards for residents and visitor use. We felt that there is a potential for tourism opportunities as well as increase the quality of life for residents. There could be more future tourism opportunities. We know that the operation of Kimbrook Island, that might look differently soon. So there might be more opportunities with that. And then if you want to go to slide 6, Jessica can discuss some of the long-term ideas that we've briefly mentioned.
Yeah, as you can see on the slide, there's quite a few long-term ideas that the Economic Recovery Task Force had come up with. I'll briefly explain each one, and I'm sure you'll have some questions after we're completed. The longer-term ideas haven't been fully discussed, but we've just been starting to talk about them. And one was internet upgrades, so offering higher speed to make it easier to communicate with clients and family. And this is obviously a definite draw for new business. Recycling program is another idea, and this project could have both environmental and economic benefits. Then there's also just diversification. Obviously, how can we attract new businesses and create jobs, infrastructure, road, alternate energy, and park projects. And then someone again mentioned JBS. They said we should, or a few members did, work closer as they are one of our largest employers. And what supports do they need to grow their local operations, and how can we capture as much of their economic impact here in the region? We already on Joint Services Strategic Plan was to do a value chain assessment for JBS. So some of these project ideas, even as a long term, are fitting in with our strategic plan. And then economic gardening, it's a term that some of you may have heard, and it's identifying businesses with the greatest growth potential and then focus on supporting them and then removing the growth barriers that they may be facing. For private tourism businesses, actively seek water sport rentals for Lake Newell, shuttles to Dinosaur Provincial Park, river tours through the park, etc. Entertainment and recreation was another idea to build upon and create more indoor and outdoor entertainment and recreation opportunities. A lot of these that I'm suggesting are all quality of life, obviously ways that they want to see us for economic development. And then Lake Newell, City and the County and the EID should work to develop tourism by allowing new business development such as campgrounds, lake lots, lakefront activities. And then provincial park operations. So as it's been discussed already, the opportunity to operate Kimbrook Island and Tillybrook campgrounds. And then finally, with Comfort Camping at Dinosaur Provincial Park, Alberta Parks is no longer running that anymore, and they just questioned whether there's an opportunity there for us to capitalize on that. So, and then the final slide is just any questions that you may have for Jamie and myself.
Thank you, Jessica and Jamie. That was an excellent presentation. So I'm going to open the floor for questions from council, and if staff has questions too. Anne-Marie.
Jessica, there was a lot of information, so I missed the part about JBS. What were you going to do with JBS?
So they were just wanting us to look further into what supports they may need to grow their local operations. And this is something that we were already doing. So I mentioned that we were looking at doing a value chain assessment. So that's basically looking at where they are accessing a lot of their resources. One thing that came up, I hosted a tour recently and they said that they ship all of their linens to Calgary. So is there an opportunity then for a local business to take that on and try to do all their, to clean their aprons for them? I know that they're looking at other ways to change their operations as well. So is there a way for us to capitalize on one of those? And like I said, I know they're not ready to talk about it yet, but we were already in discussions with their team. With COVID hitting, it's obviously put a big we're not able to talk to them as much. We are still communicating with one of their staff in HR just on terms of our workforce development strategy. So they're active in that. It's just with how busy they've been, they're not right now focused on working with us on their value chain. So that may be something we'll push into 2021 as a long-term project.
Thank you. Other questions? I have, go ahead, Hubie. And then I have Ellen.
Well, I think it's interesting about the motocross recreations because there's a lot of people have these types of vehicles and they use them in areas that aren't designated for that. So they end up spinning around grass areas and on roads, spinning donuts. And I think a lot of these people need areas like that to take these vehicles over there and recreate on them. So that's a good idea. And the other one is the Dinosaur Park. I think it's great that we're getting the 876 paved because a lot of people are going to go to that park and use it there. And that's one of the great advantages we have of getting that road paved. So those are my comments on those items.
Thank you, Hubie. Ellen?
Yes, a question regarding the EID. So discussions are underway. How are they feeling about creating another campground in the region? Like, I know they've been, I mean, they really aren't in the business of tourism, although they really have stepped up. Of course, we've got Crowling Valley and we have Rolling Hills Reservoir. But are they excited or are they on board of thinking of opening up a different campground?
That's a tough one to answer just because we haven't started the conversation with them yet. We're just the city we started with on Tuesday. We're speaking with you today. And then this will be going forward to joint services on the July, I think, 14th meeting. So we're just starting the conversation with obviously our really important partners. And then we'll also be engaging with the EID, as they're an important partner as well, obviously.
So I guess I'm looking at, you know, the types of short-term ideas that you guys have suggested, and I think that's a great place to start because of the severity of the pandemic and how it affected the business in their business model. But what my question would be is what's the city's plan when it comes to those short-term ideas? Because I mean, long-term ideas we can discuss at length and put the plan in place. But I think those short-term ideas are something that if we have some alignment with cities' ideas, then it maybe would work for both inside the city and outside the city as far as the county goes.
So we've just started those discussions. Obviously with the county as well, we've already started doing implementing some of those ways to help out businesses by waiving development fees on the short term, but on the long term, the city is now and I understand, I think Jamie and I joined in right when you guys were discussing it as well. We're all in both development departments re-looking at how we're processing things, timelines, just reducing that red tape. So the city is already on board in that aspect. In terms of our local preference policy and tendering, it did come up at the council committee on Tuesday, and we are going to be really looking at how we, in all of our departments, and how we tender and put out those RFPs and RFQs. We also in the past have hosted a lot of procurement sessions. We haven't had a huge uptake in them, but it's just looking at, again, you know, from the city's side standpoint and same from the counties, it's easy for us to both do that. And I think that we should be doing that. What the committee though actually came up and said was, or the Economic Recovery Task Force, and Jamie can speak to this as well, is that it's not just the city and the county, it's everyone. So obviously we have, 3 schools that are coming in here to be built. And if that process, if they already have their tendering process decided on who they want to put that out to, or, you know, they have their list, I can't think of the terms. One of the public works guys can maybe chime in on how they put those RFPs out. Our members of our Economic Recovery Task Force says it's also those companies that they have a hard time getting involved with, right? So we're trying to figure out how we can make it more accessible for our local businesses to be able to tender and bid on some of those projects that aren't just city and county related, but across the board, if that answers your question.
Yes, that's very helpful. On a side note, what have you received any news as far as businesses that will not be reopening or really contemplating whether they're going to be opening?
I'll let Jamie talk about the one of that we were talking about this morning.
Not sure which one you're talking about this morning, the Prairie Sprinter or Prairie Sprint? Oh, yeah. So, well, the only one for sure that we know has closed down is Ricky's in the Econo Lodge. I don't know that necessarily had anything to do with COVID, though. It just happened to be the timing. I think they were having issues long before COVID hit. So they are closed down and selling right now with no plans to reopen, obviously, until they sell. And then we do have a business. They're not located in Brooks, but they do lots of tours in the Brooks region, out to Dinosaur Park and etc. And that's Prairie Sprinter Tours. And I was speaking with them yesterday, and I know they're struggling really hard with all the restrictions because they're a bus tour. They can only have so many people in their buses. So it's not really viable for them to continue running. And unless things can change fairly quickly, they've exhausted all the reliefs from the government already as far as the loans and everything they can access. So as an example, if this continues on for, quite a few more months, they don't expect they're going to be able to continue operations. So I'm sure there's probably a few other places that are in that same boat. We have not really heard from any of them, though. So those are the only ones I know of so far.
Yeah, and something interesting to know is that when COVID first hit and we immediately put out a website page, right? We contacted everyone and said, hey, we have this website page where you can go for resources, reach out to our team. We put out newsletters, we put out everything on our social media channels saying, hey, our economic development team is here to help you navigate those resources. What is it that you need help with? And we honestly heard radio silence. We didn't hear a lot from businesses. We had a few reach out to us saying, what are the restrictions and guidelines? Can you guide us through what the province is putting us on in terms of restrictions? But I think everyone was just trying to keep their head above water and just survive. So I thought by now we'd start to hear from some businesses letting us know a little bit more about how they're doing. But we still are just hearing little snippets here and there, like Jamie's story this morning. But we are hearing from even those the businesses that sit on the Economic Recovery Task Force. They're obviously hurting, especially those who are exporting or who are in oil and gas, obviously. But all of them are hurt in some way. Even some have said that they've struggled trying to find staff because they have a project coming up and they've tried to get someone to take that project on, but because they're collecting server, it was breakup or something else happened. It was a hard time actually finding someone to come in and fill those positions. So I'm also sitting on the local employment support group just to talk about some of the challenges our employees are having and then how those employment supports are having. So we're trying to engage businesses, employees, and everyone that we can to figure out how we can assist them or how they're struggling or hurting. So on a long-winded answer for you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions from council or comments as far as the information that Jessica and Jamie have provided? Wayne.
I noticed that you've got internet upgrades, and the city a while back was doing something to develop high-speed internet in the city itself, and it was going to go out so far into the county. How far is that going, and why wouldn't the city be trying to work with the EID because they have their system already set up? What is actually going on there?
To be honest, I'm having a hard time remembering. We were actually working with Palliser Economic Partnership on that project. And it was ongoing for quite a few years. And I believe it was even partnered with other municipalities beyond just the city of Brooks, and we were a larger player. I can't remember where we were at, but it was something that we can definitely revisit and see how we can go about trying to work also with our municipal partners. I don't think it would be primarily a city of Brooks thing. It would definitely be a city-county project for sure. I'm sorry that doesn't answer your question.
I think I have Tracy. She's texted me. She's not on my screen. So Tracy, go ahead.
I wondered about that. Thanks, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering about, I would like to sort of ask about the EID conversation regarding the pathway and the continuation. I have presented to them about 3 times now on this project, and there's been extreme hesitation and resistance to the idea. And I'm wondering if you've had any conversation with that, or kind of, because the majority or quite a bit of the land to continue that pathway is EID land, so there needed to be some land acquisition, and that became the hesitation with liability issues and whatnot. So if you can talk about that, Jess.
Yeah, I was saying earlier, we haven't had a chance to engage the EID as of yet. We wanted to first bring it to the city and the county just to see, or even to hear your feedback, and that's good to know. I had no idea that those are some of the roadblocks. Funny enough, I know that you represent myself and where I live in the county, and when I first moved out to the county, there was a lot of discussions and roadblocks to getting the pathway out there. I know a lot of the residents that I live near wanted it to go out there, and the recovery task force is really looking at both options. They like the idea of whether it goes out to the resort or the lake, but in all honesty, Jamie and I haven't moved the discussions forward to know what even building a pathway would look like. And I know as the county, I think this has been brought up before, so I'm curious to see if this is even something that the county would be willing to entertain before we even move on to the EID. So I know that we would need both of you as partners to be able to do something like that, right? So
yeah, just to reiterate, yeah, like the only full discussions we've had are for the projects that we consider immediate. We're trying to get those done and accomplished right now. And once we get some movement on those projects, we'll start the discussions on the short-term and long-term projects.
Okay, thank you. I had Clarence. Now do we have, I should ask Todd first. We had delegation for 11:30. Are they available, or can I continue?
It's me, Brian, so carry on as you need to, but I do need to be done around 12 o'clock.
Clarence, I think you had your hand up. And just on a side note, I did lose Tracy, so if you want a question and I don't answer you, send me a text or something like that. I'll try to accommodate you. Go ahead, Clarence.
So I've been looking at all these plans, and I guess the question I have is, wouldn't we have done all these things even without COVID? And these are all things that can be done, but what has COVID really changed? Are you finding that, and I think I heard hints of it already, that people aren't really ready to get out yet? Some people aren't. You have jobs, but they don't want to do them because they're fear. And how are we combating that? And can we do anything for people like who have these transportation issues and you can't stuff 20 people in the bus anymore and that type of thing? And I guess what I'm really looking for, are there ways, because the world is going to be different as we come out of this, and nobody knows when we're going to be totally out of it, if ever. And how are we trying to help that process, what COVID has really affected? And I haven't got any answers because I'm not sure there are any, but have you given that some thought on, how COVID has affected some of these things, and what do we have to do different? And how can we help that?
Do you want to go, Jamie, or do you want me to?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't really say, kind of same as you, Clarence, I don't really have a lot of answers for that. I mean, unfortunately, a lot of things are dependent on what the government starts allowing in terms of restrictions and what's going to be allowed to open, what's not going to be allowed to open, dependent on if there's a second wave. That is one thing we have started the discussions on, is we want to make sure our businesses are prepared if and when a second wave hits, because we want to make sure that we don't have to shut the economy completely back down. We want to make sure that we have ways that our businesses can still continue to function and run if that happens. So that is something that is on our radar. As far as everything else, we are somewhat limited in terms of we kind of have to wait and see what the government is telling us we can and can't do, I guess. I don't know if you have anything to add, Jess?
No, I say the same thing. Even when we asked our businesses the immediate, how can we help you? It's like we said, it's really, really tough too. Even those that are sitting on this recovery task force, I think in the immediate, some of them just needed financial assistance to try to implement some of the changes that the government had told them to do. We've been working a lot with MedStat as well, and three main issues have come out of COVID in general. OH&S was a big one, with just that safety and making sure that their staff was safe. So they've been really busy with trying to make sure that they're following all the, those taking necessary precautions. The other thing that they've been highly needing is business resources. So again, we try to provide as many business resources as we possibly can, just so that they're accessible, even if they're not letting us know that they're needing them. And then mental health has been the third biggest thing that businesses are really seeing. So those three things are really tough, especially on the OH&S side and the mental health side to help them. But again, at least with business resources, we keep saying we're here to lend a hand or an ear, whatever it is that you need. And then just connecting them with maybe some of those resources where they can get OH&S help or that mental health for their not just their employees and their staff, but themselves as well. So, but like Jamie said, it's hard to know until when that second wave hits, tomorrow is not really known. So.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? Comments from staff? If not, thank you very much for the update. We'll look through. We'll have a chance to digest this, and I think, in conjunction with the city, if there's things that we can do, especially in the short term, I think that our council would be receptive to doing what we can.
Can I ask just a quick question before we go? So, sure. With our economic recovery task force wanting some of these immediate options, what's the best way then to bring them back to council? Even the off-highway, the UTV idea. I think that's one of the biggest ones that we would, the pathway is a long-term thing, but this off-highway vehicle usage is something that we're currently exploring. So would that be worth coming back to council and having a discussion just on that topic alone? And then getting into some of those short-term, long-term ideas.
Okay, well, what about, would council like to have a discussion with the staff as far as the ramifications of some of these suggestions? And I think it's fair enough to have that discussion sometime today, later on in the day, and then bring it back for some comments, or if we have questions, we can reach out to yourself or Jamie for some clarification. Is that okay?
Awesome, perfect, thank you. Okay, thanks for having us.
Thank you again for your presentation.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, Mark, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay.
Unsightly property. This has been an issue that has been brought up a number of times throughout my 12-year tenure with Newell. There is the current bylaw 1869-16 unsightly premises that deals with these matters. Over the course of the years and even recently, tours with some of yourselves and whatnot have resulted in the identification of property concerns, care and upkeep, whether it is old structures, vehicles, tall grass, numerous things like that that can lead potentially to unsightly premises, and how we go about potentially cleaning those items up. The biggest issue about this is the County of Newell receives some public concerns regarding unsightly premises. And through that, we have the bylaw, and the process is identified in the bylaw on how those are to be reported so that they can be followed up and dealt with accordingly. It needs to be understood that it is a lengthy process. It can be a very time-consuming process, which is one of the basis of why it's been left to be at the judgment of public discretion of what property is unsightly. I bring it forward to council today because I believe potentially some council members would like to see us do more than wait for the public to bring that forward. And I'm looking for direction if there's anything that council is interested in changing in the bylaw. Perhaps, as I've included in the document, it's a matter of drafting a community standards bylaw to say, I believe land use bylaw already identifies how many derelict vehicles that are unlicensed and not capable of running can be on properties and such. But we don't have anything that says how tall your grass can be or what state your property must be in. Do we want to get into a proactive approach on this? Do we want to leave the neighbors to be the judgment call on when they believe it's a detriment to their property, potentially affecting the value of their property, maybe trying to sell their property, they can't get it sold because of what the property across the road or nearby looks like? Where would council like to go with the unsightly property and community kind of basis from where it sits today? I've provided a number of options ranging from changes to the bylaw and anything else that council can conceive as being necessary to doing nothing with the bylaw and leaving it as is. And part of this comes down to the staffing that we currently have to deal with these matters and the time commitment to take care of them as they come in. I will answer any questions or consider any suggestions council has.
Thanks, Mark. Questions for Mark? No questions. Wow. Trace, there you go. Tracy.
Just wondering, will some of this come out, like when Jeff was talking about the review of the land use bylaw and stuff that they'll be undergoing in the near future? Will some of this maybe come out in that? And is it a really big problem? Can we not just leave it as status quo? To do anything more, we're looking at increased staff time and increased resources. We don't currently have the manpower to do anything about it. And most of our other dysfunctions, or lack of a better word, is complaint driven as well. So just a couple questions in there on that.
I do believe the bylaw has, the land use bylaw has some components that again will be considered in the land use bylaw, but I don't know where our planning consultant is going to help steer us. And of course that will be at council's discretion as to what that land use bylaw ultimately contains, right? For these purposes, we have the standalone bylaw that kind of governs above and beyond, but also includes anything of the land use bylaw. And then, of course, there is Section 545 of the MGA that dictates the process we're supposed to follow up with unsightlies, getting court orders. And then, of course, we get to contend with a judge that determines what is unsightly and what is not. So a judge will look at what the community peace officer has determined or suggests as being unsightly, and the judge ultimately determines what is remedied if a property owner goes to contend that order in court. I don't know. Right now, it's left to officer discretion as to what is satisfactory because we have no community standards bylaw to dictate the grass cannot exceed 6 inches, or you can only have 2 farm implements parked in the back 40 that are no longer used. And some of those things create issue because in my experience, a farmer will come up and say, well, you know, there's a part on that machine that I can use on another machine to repair my machine, so it still has use, right? it's not to say it's derelict or not useful anymore, even though maybe somebody that's used to living in an urban setting has moved to the country and they don't like it. How do all those factors kind of come into play, and who does become the judge and jury? Well, you can set a community standards bylaw. From some of my discussion with our neighbors, Cypress County, MD of Tabor, Wheatland, they do have various standards for hamlets, differing standards for country residential groups, residential subdivision on your acreages, more or less. And then sometimes they won't even touch an agricultural parcel at all. So they've chosen some of their standards. I don't know how you eliminate one group from being judged, but you judge a bunch of others. It's really a council's discretion as to how far we want to go with this. And I can make the suggestions based on others, and I don't. I do believe that maybe in higher density developments there should be some standards so that they are set, but really it's all complaint driven. Cypress County was the only one, I believe, that did a little bit of proactive enforcement, which was in their hamlets and in their grouped country residential development kind of stuff. But that was about the extent that I saw out of it.
Thanks, Mark. Kelly.
Yeah, so we've had this conversation before. It's good to have it again. I think our bylaw is good. The part that I do struggle with, and the people that call me struggle with, is the complaint-driven part of it. That unless they put their name and their complaint on paper, nothing can be done. We had an environmental issue and with a property, and unless the neighbor would physically write down the problem, which they did in that case, nothing could be done by our bylaw enforcement. I wonder if it's in good interests of the county to begin to look at high traffic areas. Maybe that's a way to start this visual beautification. I know they do that in small, in municipalities. They begin the process that way. So 1 and 2 and 3 number highways, for example, where we could spend some effort there. I know that in municipalities, safety comes into play as well, where and that could come into play for us on high traffic highways as well. So just a thought. Overall, I think it's good. I know that it's difficult for neighbors that have to look at things and that are constantly making those judgment calls. That's my only comment.
Thank you, Kelly. So I'd appreciate some other input from councillors, but I guess in my experience over the years that I've been on council, the complaints I've received are primarily around abandoned or vacant properties that have been vacant for a number of years. And I'm curious whether we need a complaint to act on some of them, especially when there is buildings that are falling down, perhaps situations where somebody could get hurt if they happen to trespass on that property. I mean, it's not property to trespass, but in the end, that's where I've seen the complaints. I have one across the road from me, and they've cleaned it up since on their own. And there was never a complaint filed, but that was a case where the barns were in derelict. There was pits there from hog operations. I don't know of anybody that, like our family, didn't go on it, but I know that there was potential for some health and safety issues, but not something in terms of contamination. So it falls into a different category, because I know municipally we do have some teeth when it comes to like hazardous materials on properties. But I was just curious whether you guys have had any of those kind of complaints, and what staff's recommendation would be when it comes to vacant or derelict properties. I'll let I see Mark first, and then I'll go to Tracy.
I guess just to respond to Councillor Chrisman's comments, I want council to be assured that when a ratepayer is expected to put their complaint in writing and their name down, that is kept within municipal enforcement services and our records. That complaint does not get shared with the landowner as to who the complainant is. So they're protected. And I know that in the rural setting, you know, that it can be pretty easy to pinpoint who the complainant is, because you've only got one neighbor every half a mile or so, right? But that doesn't mean that it isn't somebody from 3 miles away. So somebody having the complaint filed against them could make the assumption, but it's not necessarily accurate that is where the complaint came from, and we are not at liberty to share who the complainant is, just for the record. To talk about the order to remedy the contraventions, that's 545 of the MGA. If the designated officer finds that a person is contravening this or any other enactment that the municipality is authorized to enforce a bylaw, the designated officer may, by written order, require the person responsible for the contravention to remedy it if the circumstances so require. It's a matter of stop doing something or to change a way in which the person's doing it. Direct a person to take any action or measures necessary to remedy a contravention of the enactment or bylaw. State a time with which the person must comply. State that if the person does not comply, what directions within that specified time the municipality will take action or measure at the expense of the person. When we get down to the order to remedy the dangers and unsightly property, it's looked at as being a detrimental to the surrounding area, which includes causing the decline of market value of property in the surrounding area, or unsightly condition in respect of a structure that includes a structure whose exterior shows signs of significant physical deterioration, and in respect of land includes land that shows signs of serious disregard for general maintenance or upkeep. So to kind of tie back to your comments there, Councillor De Jong, those are the kinds of order premises that we can be based on to deal with matters. But again, I don't know if we're looking to have staff cut loose and file the complaints against properties as we're driving down a road. And then again, the labor component is very difficult to do that. And I'm not sure in a rural setting such as ours, where people are trying to get away from restrictions and live more of a relaxed lifestyle and stuff, that's the direction, but that's council to advise council on, or advise staff on, sorry.
Thanks, Mark. Tracy, did you still have a question? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I guess my comment was a little bit around the process, the complaint process. And maybe that's something that could be changed a little bit to make it a little easier. It sounds like from Kelly's comments that, you know, there's a fear of making a complaint because the neighbor against neighbor kind of thing. You know, we say that the complaint has to be in writing. Can it be something as simple as a ratepayer contacts their counselor and the counselor contacts staff? You know, like, I'm just wondering is it the process of the complaint that makes it an issue? And could that be changed to make it easier for people to complain?
I guess what we've talked about a little bit in the office is how some of that could be relaxed. Now, if it's a matter of somebody trying to get anonymous, then we don't have anybody that administration can follow up with to ensure it's been dealt with. Your identity is kept anonymous once your complaint is filed anyway. So to send an email with your name, your contact information on and stuff is quite simple. To file a handwritten complaint or hand-typed complaint with the same on it is, in my opinion, quite simple. I don't know, John, if there's any other methods of filing that complaint that you would be comfortable with in dealing with that would hold up in court that need to be identified. And I see Kevin has a comment behind it as well. But John, is there anything else there? I'm not aware of anything that anybody else does different. In fact, some of them, as I identified, have standard forms that it has to be filled out and completed in whole, where right now we're just asking for a general complaint with a name and contact on it.
Right. Thank you, Mark and Council. In my training I received, which was conducted by lawyers, with unsightlies, they're very complex. The main issue with unsightlies isn't an issue, but you're going on someone's property. So the courts are very strict on, with MGA and all that, what conditions that we're doing legally to do that, and with the process. So part of that process, which helps us out, back to the legal aspect, is having a public complaint, because then we can show it's in the public interest of why we're going onto someone's property to remedy whatever the concern is. Plus what Mark mentioned, if we have a name and all that, we can get back to that person, explain to them what the process is, because one thing we hear is a frustration of, why isn't this cleaned up the next day? And so if we have a name to that person that we can contact, we can go further in to explain the process and how we're governed by the MGA. If we want to especially get cost recovery back, that there's deadlines and timelines and appeal processes that are built into that unsightly order that we have to comply with. So explaining it shows to the public that it's not the next day or shortly thereafter remedy situation. And again, they are kept anonymous. I do have to state yes and no, because if it goes to as far as to a court, if the person did want to go that far, as you're probably all well aware, everyone has the right for a day in court. So at that point, if it goes to court, you're not going to remain anonymous, because we would need your information from a public complaint. So we can carry the anonymous so far, depending which stage the cleanup goes to.
Kevin?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to add a couple comments. I think standard changes obviously would be key if council wants staff to be the person that determines whether something is reasonable or not. Counselor by judge, where a counselor tells us to act, would work also, because we have the information to act on them. We always have to remember that whoever the enforcement order is going to be against is going to have the ability to appeal to council if they don't agree with the terms of the order. So I would encourage everybody, I think if you went through your divisions, I would be very surprised if you couldn't find 20 properties that would borderline unsightly, maybe 30, if you went around and looked. So where does that fit in the standard of things, I think is key if we're going to be changing the standards. But if we're going to expect staff to enforce this, where we get a call on one property anonymous for us to go out and we know there's another 15 that's worse, that's pretty tough to do that. So that's all I wanted to mention.
Thanks, Kevin. Hubie and then Anne-Marie.
Well, thanks, Mark, for bringing this up. I just noticed in our little community, since we started all the redevelopment here, the sewer, the water, and the paving, that people are more interested in keeping their yards clean and maintained and mowed, etc. And it really looks a lot better since we started doing this. And Yes, there are complaints, but there is a situation where the grass goes to 2-3 feet high and they haven't mowed their grass all spring. Well, it's high time they got that mower out there and get it done, because it's a fire hazard, and it's the trees as well that aren't trimmed and maintained. And I think it's a good idea to have this ongoing the way it is, and we have the complaint system. And it keeps our property values where they should be, because who wants to move in beside a place that's unsightly and not taken care of?
Thanks, Hubie. Anne-Marie?
With the tall grass, that's an interesting one, because you almost have to keep an eye on whether it's 1 year or 3 years or all the time. You know, people could have something going on in their families. The point I wanted to make is that I liked what Cyprus did with hamlets. Hamlets are a little different than just our general area. And rather than making the complaint system easier, I would actually, and I can't believe I'm saying this, go the other way. Like, maybe, I don't know if I as a counselor want to be the one that set the standards, because mine would be quite different from Lionel. And then you have 2 different sets of criteria in each division. But I would like to see them a little stricter in hamlets. You know, hamlets need to be nice, like we were saying. But maybe not one person just phoning in. You might need to have 2 or 3 at least to have that same complaint, and then go forward from that.
Sorry, Ellen and Tracy. Before you start, Ellen, Mark, you mentioned you're up against the clock at 12. It's almost 12. What can we, do you have some comments before I go to Ellen? And
I think all we need is some direction from council on this, and if it's to look at bringing something new and revised to the bylaw, administration will go to work on that to bring some changes forward, but we need to know what those changes look like. If it's directed at hamlets, does that also include grouped country residential stuff? Is it based by zoning? I don't know. Are we looking at all properties, or is ag off the books and industry, commercial developments off the books? Is it, as Councillor Crispin suggested, some of our community entrance corridors and stuff where people travel, and that lasting impression of what they saw driving through Newell? I'm looking for that direction, because as it's been shared, this has come up direct from councillors before, whether it's through road tours or we've been looking at other matters. We've just kind of pointed out the obvious, but there's no record that Newell has of anybody complaining about a property. I know the officers do a lot of time under the partnership with our partners in the urban areas. And we deal with, I think, what was it? The number was like 22 last year in Newell itself, between the hamlets and whatnot. How do we want to go about it? And if there's going to be an elevation of time commitment to this, then potentially at budget time, we're going to have to talk about that labor component and how we go about it. Just some direction. And I don't need to be sitting here for you to make a motion or a decision either, if you get consensus or a motion from somebody on council.
okay, thanks, Mark. Ellen?
Yes, I would like to add the group setting, the urban group settings, or not the urban one, the rural group settings, because if you buy a property and you have 4 or 5 neighbors and one of them has tall grass, terribly many vehicles, fire hazard, you look out the window and it's just a disaster. I would definitely want to add them. To me, it's a little different when you live as an agriculture setting in the middle of nowhere. Although I did like Mark's suggestion about the entrances into urban centers. Being on the tourism board, it's been time and time said by our consultants that it's so important. For example, when you drive by Brooks and it looks, the businesses look, they don't have a proper fence up to hide their operations. And it is so important what it looks like to get your potential tourists off the highway and go into town to spend money on fuel, meals, shopping, what have you. So I do like that suggestion, Mark. But again, I would like to add the rural group settings as well. Thank you.
Tracy?
Yeah, I think, like, I agree with the hamlet and the rural settings, the rural residential settings. I maybe miscommunicated early. I was not indicating that council should set the standard or be the judge and jury on it. I was trying to sort of suggest if a complaint came through us, that it was acceptable that a counselor was the one that brought it forward to staff, avoiding maybe that the ratepayer would feel more comfortable talking to us individually over it. So I was not saying that we as a council set a standard for our own division. I was just, we would be the link for the complainant. So just to clarify, but I think overall, good discussion.
Thank you. Any other comments, suggestions? Hubie?
There has been situations here in Tilly where I have gone to the residents with my county card and told them the situation. They said, I'd hate to see a complaint or a ticket, but just to let you know, your grass is getting pretty high, and I'd like to just help you out here and make sure that you're pre-warned. And they appreciated it, and I gave them my card, and lo and behold, they did something about it. So there are ways to do it.
I think that's well said, Hubie. You know, sometimes just the communication and making somebody aware is all that it takes. So how does council want to deal with it? We have some recommendations in front of us. Are you satisfied with what's out there? Do you want to enhance or look at or some suggestions to bring back? Clarence. I can't hear you, Clarence.
Sorry about that. Keep forgetting to put my mic on. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Just with a little bit of tongue in cheek, we're talking about unsightly premises. We just approved a couple in a high traffic area that some people think is unsightly. I don't know if we'll ever come to a conclusion on what is and what isn't. I see that the recommended action from staff is basically to leave it as is. And until it becomes a problem to such an extent that I think we all agree that it's not being handled correctly, I think we just leave status quo, and that's what the motion is. And if we actually need a motion to keep things the same, I would make that, but I wouldn't even think that we need it.
Go ahead, Lionel.
Yes, I think to add some legitimacy to complaints, that I do believe people need to have their name behind it. Because it's too easy to complain about somebody. It's too easy to make complaints when you're not, what's the word I'm looking for? When you don't have a name tag to it. I believe, if anything, they should have to be more accountable for the complaints they make. I know it's difficult to determine what is unsightly and what isn't, because, like Clarence said, beauty's in the eyes of the beholder. And so I guess just a comment, not. I guess I'd be in favor of leaving things as status quo as it is today.
Now, there was some suggestions as far as treating hamlets a little different than the rural communities. And what are the thoughts behind that? Do we still? I think I get the impression that from council that leaving the aspect of complaint driven is supported, but there was a considerable discussion about hamlets and subdivisions as far as perhaps a different model, or am I out of line there? Go ahead, Clarence.
I think we already have that flexibility. What someone would complain, just in general terms, people will complain quicker on something that's deemed unsightly in a hamlet than they will out in the farm community. And so I think we've already got that. There's a lot in town, grass is growing, and there's vehicles parked in there, and it is unsightly. No matter in whose judgment, you'll get that complaint very quickly in a hamlet. Out in the countryside, you don't get it half as quick. So I think there's always that's already built into that system that we have. Now, John might disagree because they deal with it all the time, but I really think we have flexibility.
Thanks,
I would
Clarence.
agree with Clarence.
John, do you have any final comments before we pass this
I
along?
was just going
to
comment. I agree with. Sorry, Brian. I was going to say I agree with Clarence on his comments, and I think it's back to that public input that I think is so important with unsightlies. That if it's in a hamlet, my experience so far has been that gets brought up usually a lot quicker than a rural area out in a farm that somebody's got as a concern. So I believe exactly what Clarence said is what I've been seeing too.
Okay, thank you. So we have a motion which basically says to keep the basis of our land use or the unsightly premises in its current condition. And I would entertain somebody move that. I know it doesn't change anything, but I think what it does is it does tell in the minutes and people, it does tell them that council supports that or doesn't support it if you don't see fit to vote for that. So Kelly will make that motion. Okay, any more discussion? Wayne? Okay, you were just getting ready to vote. So I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Seeing nobody opposed, that motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. I have 12:10. We'll break for lunch if that's okay and come back at 1. We have a delegation at 1 o'clock. Is that okay for everybody? Okay, thank you. See you at 1.